120 seconds. 110 seconds. 100 seconds. 90 seconds. 80 seconds. 70 seconds. 60 seconds. 50 seconds. 40 seconds. 30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
My friends, once again, it is indeed time to get our talk on. It's Morning Talk with me, your host, J. Stan McCauley, along with the champions of talk. This morning's talk champion is in the house, none other than the one and only Jonathan Small. Mr. Small, how you doing, sir?
Doing fine, Stan. It's a pleasure to be back here again every Monday or every week. Look forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a gorgeous day outside right now.
Beautiful day out?
Well, the whole weekend has been beautiful.
It was a beautiful weekend this week, absolutely.
It seemed like everybody was just out, for the weekend. Like everything was planned, either personally or just certain events. I mean, nothing major, but it just seemed like a lot of people were just outside. Elizabeth Park was packed Saturday. They had something going on there. I don't know what it was, but it was pretty much jam-packed. I don't know about the other parks in the area, but I know Elizabeth Park was pretty much packed. And I don't know if there was any baseball games with the Yard Goats playing. Is that their name again, the Yard Goats? Or did they change the name again?
No. Harvard Yard Goats.
Harvard Yard Goats. Okay, just want to make sure.
Name remains the same.
So did you get a chance to get outside this weekend?
Let's see, what did I do? I think Saturday I did some door knocking.
Okay.
When I went out, we did some door knocking Saturday. What else did we do? I don't know. We did a lot of writing over the weekend. A lot of strategy and writing, things along that line. So, believe it or not, I think we're in the house most of the day Saturday and most of the day Sunday.
Oh boy, you had a
very, very, very exhausting weekend though.
You always seem to be busy on the weekends for some reason. You're very busy.
Yeah. Last weekend I was in Bridgeport covering the Economic Democracy Act. Yeah, conference. That was the Saturday before this one. So it's been very, very busy.
Busy, yeah.
Very busy.
Well, you definitely want to take advantage of the weather, man. If you got to do any outdoor activities, just to be out in general, not even so much always business-wise, just socially too. You know, try to relax a little bit and have a little fun.
No such thing as relaxation. No. Can't relax.
You don't believe in relaxing?
No. I believe in relaxing. I just don't. I can't afford to relax.
To relax? Oh.
Yeah.
So that don't overwhelm you at times? Always be on gear to be, well, I guess professionally.
It almost overwhelmed me this morning when I don't even know why I woke up, but it was 7:45.
Yeah.
So technically 25 minutes ago, I was in a dead sleep.
You did very good though, getting yourself together in that short period of time.
Oh yeah. You know, you get that voice when the phone rings in the middle of the night. Hey, how you doing? Like you've been awake all night, but no.
Yeah. I don't know what happened with that alarm clock.
The alarms are all shut off. I don't know what happened. I must have shut them off for Sunday morning, I think, so I could sleep late. But we're here. It is Monday, and we are alive and well, and we're awake. So Mondays, of course, always time for us to have a special guest join us. And, of course, this Monday is no different. Jonathan finds great guests from all over the world. And today, of course, is same thing today as every Monday. So he's gonna introduce our next guest, and we're gonna learn some things. So get some pencil, paper, take notes. I call these like our weekly master class, because whatever the information is that the guest is gonna share, it's gonna be great. So, Jonathan Small, you have the floor, sir.
Well, good morning to people out there on Morning Talk Live with J. Stan McCauley Talk Show. This week on Morning Talk Live, we have a very instrumental organization that is doing some tremendous things towards the impact of the state of North Carolina. The person has tremendous amount of statewide connections. He's very active in many different areas throughout North Carolina, and he plays a real key role in the success of this particular state. The guest this morning is the president of Leadership North Carolina, no other than Brian Etheridge. Good morning, Brian. How are you doing?
Good morning, Jonathan. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you both for having me on this morning. It's good to start the week with y'all.
All right, it's our pleasure too, Brian. Brian, before we get into our main topic of discussion, could you kind of let people know a little bit about yourself and background briefly?
Certainly. So I'm a native of North Carolina. I grew up about an hour south of Raleigh. Raleigh is the state capital. It's where Leadership North Carolina is headquartered, where we are based, and started my career as an educator, and then made a transition after a number of years in the classroom to the nonprofit sector, where I've been ever since, and have been fortunate to serve as a steward of Leadership North Carolina since 2006. So that's a quick version of who I am and how I got here this Monday morning. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Brian, what exactly does Leadership North Carolina consist of, and what is it Maine's goal towards working towards?
Yes, sir. Jonathan, thank you for that question. So Leadership North Carolina is a independent 501c3 nonprofit that was established back in the mid-1990s with our very first class starting in 1995. And with the program, we are structured around our core program, which consists of 7 sessions. Each year through a competitive application process, we select 55 leaders from all over the state of North Carolina. It's usually a mix of business, government, education, and nonprofit leaders, with the end goal of those cross-sector influencers developing relationships with one another so that they can be better informed and help address the opportunities and the challenges facing the state of North Carolina. So much of the ethos, the DNA, if you will, of why Leadership North Carolina was established in the first place came from civic leaders understanding that there were leaders in different parts of North Carolina, the western part of North Carolina, the mountains, the Piedmont, and the central part of the state, and the coast on the eastern side of North Carolina, who just didn't understand the systems of the state and didn't have the relationships among one another. So they created this curriculum, this core program, to both help inform those leaders of those systems, but also help facilitate the building of relationships among leaders. Because if you've got that foundation of relationship with other leaders from different perspectives, from different sectors, you're better positioned to be able to work through those opportunities and challenges.
Okay, Brian. Well, for people out there wondering why would I decide to select North Carolina as a state to have a main topic of discussion on, last year, North Carolina was ranked number 1 by CNBC as the number 1 state to do business in the United States. It's also the number 1 state towards the business climate, to go along with a very fast growing population base of people moving to North Carolina, and also a high number of people internationally moving to North Carolina. What has kind of put North Carolina in a position to be the number 1 state ranked by CNBC for business, and then the number 1 state for business climate?
Yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity to kind of speak to that. We were obviously very excited, and folks all across North Carolina were thrilled with the rankings last year. It does not happen overnight. These are years and years of deliberate work. I think one of the things that speaks to why we were number 1, and I think the CNBC article attributed this, is there's a pragmatic nature to North Carolina. Folks really in leadership in North Carolina are willing to put aside partisan differences when there's big opportunities on the table to really help us put our best foot forward. And when it comes to business climate and growing the state's economy, that's been the trend over the last number of years. And I think that's really a credit to the leadership in our state, both from the governor's office to the General Assembly, of seeing the big opportunities on the horizon and finding ways to come together and collaborate to help move North Carolina forward. I think part of that is obviously when you talk about business climate, you're looking at regulatory and tax structure. But I think one of the things that has helped us tremendously is when you're out recruiting businesses or having conversations, there is a level of collaboration that happens between sectors, between regions, whether it's statewide, regional, or local economic developers, elected officials who are very open to putting aside differences and finding ways to collaborate, because they see the end goal of really helping grow North Carolina's economy, providing opportunity, and that moves so many opportunities forward for our state.
Well, historically, North Carolina has changed a lot over the course of its beginning incorporation as a state, and there might be some misconceptions that people have about the state of North Carolina being a southern state, having a historical past in some areas of civil rights, the Civil War. But North Carolina definitely has really changed a lot, particularly over the past 50 to 60 years. How has actually North Carolina changed since the beginning of its establishment?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to that. And this really goes to the heart of how we begin the Leadership North Carolina core program. As you stated, so many folks have moved to North Carolina over the last number of years. Our state has more than doubled just since 1960. We are one of the fastest growing states in the country, and with a population of more than 10 million now. We have changed pretty dramatically, and that has been some of those changes have been brought about by visionary leaders over the course of our state's history. Part of those part of those challenges that we faced were geographic. But again, it goes back to the heart of how we start each Leadership North Carolina core program. We give our participants, the 55 leaders who are selected through that competitive application process, we give them 500 years of North Carolina history to kind of serve as a foundation, knowing not everybody is a native North Carolinian. We lovingly call it, folks got to North Carolina as quickly as they could, and we're glad to have them, and we want to help them understand and get a sense of place of where they are. And part of the reason we do this 500 years of North Carolina history is we want to challenge them to help write the next chapter of North Carolina's history. There's a lot on the horizon. So, traditionally, North Carolina was a state that had a rich background in textiles and manufacturing, furniture making, and agriculture. Agribusiness is still the number one economic impact industry, if you will, in the state of North Carolina. Number two behind that is the economic impact of the military. We have a number of large military installations. We're one of the most military-friendly states because of those, the alignment of those bases and the personnel that work both on post and the auxiliary organizations around each of those installations. So, but we have seen some really visionary leadership over the years. So, our state was one around the time of the Great Depression where a lot of local governments were struggling with revenues, and the state said, we're going to pay the teachers. We're going to make teacher salaries something that the state of North Carolina funds, and that the local governments, your local property taxes, are what fund the actual buildings. That, I think, had a transformative effect of providing a sound basic education across the state. It certainly wasn't equal, but that laid a foundation. And education is something that's very important in North Carolina. It's enshrined in our state constitution. So that's a little bit of the history. The civil rights movement is another area where we've seen some tremendous opportunities. Obviously, the sit-in movement got its start in Greensboro. For students from North Carolina A&T State University helped lead that effort. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was founded at Shaw University, a HBCU based here in Raleigh. And there have been tremendous opportunities over the years of citizens becoming engaged and helping us work toward a place where all North Carolinians, all of us have a seat at the table and have that opportunity for growth and prosperity, which is, I think, something that we're all want to work toward, and making sure that we're all providing our children and our fellow citizens the best opportunities we can. There are also some pretty significant opportunities in the 1950s and 60s as folks were coming back from World War II and transitioning back into our state. We certainly saw during World War II and the lead up to that health was not something that we were exactly known for. We had a number of folks that weren't qualifying for the armed services because of malnutrition and other areas. So that led to initiatives, public-private partnerships, and initiatives to help our citizens become more healthy, sanitation, nutrition, and education around a lot of those issues. And then going into the 50s and 60s, leaders understanding, okay, we have started to grow. We've attracted businesses in textiles and manufacturing because of low labor costs, but they were looking 20, 30, 40, 50 years ahead and understanding that the future was going to really belong to the educated. And they made a concerted effort to create what is now one of the most highly regarded systems in our state, our North Carolina Community College system, to provide education in 58 different community colleges, all within about 20 to 30 minutes from each county seat in the state of North Carolina. So you're providing access and affordable education to folks all across the state that is very nimble. those folks in our community college system are incredibly skilled at adapting to the needs of specific employers and communities. And they partner incredibly well, not only with their peers, but also another real crown jewel, if you will, of North Carolina is our university system. So the University of North Carolina system and the affiliated colleges and universities there, as well as our independent colleges and universities. So we have such a breadth and depth of higher education in North Carolina, and that's something we've been known for many, many years. And those leaders in the 50s and 60s that really helped create the University of North Carolina system, the community college system, also saw the need for educating our people as it relates to business and industry, created the Research Triangle Park. So it literally formed a triangle between Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, linked flagship research institutions within that triangle. North Carolina State University, Duke University, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, but you've also got a number of amazing HBCUs within that area. And that has really, it was literally a scrub pine forest when it got started. And there were a fair number of folks that had their doubts of whether this thing was going to take off. It has absolutely become an economic engine for this region of the state. And there are other folks around the country, around the world, who have looked to model the Research Triangle Park. And just like anything, there's that need to have visionary leaders who are willing to make investments that aren't going to get you a 2-year or a 4-year return in an election cycle, and that's tough these days. But we're now bearing the fruits of a fig tree that leaders planted 30, 40, 50 years ago. They may not have seen the fruits of that effort, but we certainly are benefiting from that here at this time in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Well, Brian, obviously that was a lot of critical information about the history of North Carolina. And on the outside, it looks like it's one of the most successful states in the country when you get into many different areas. But for some people who may not be aware, there's still some internal issues that might make people question North Carolina. I believe you have a very low minimum wage of $7.25. Most states are trying to increase the minimum wage. In North Carolina right now currently isn't stuck at that particular wage level. There was also a tremendous amount of political divisions when Governor Roy Cooper was elected as governor. I believe the Republican legislator in North Carolina tried to remove the executive power from Governor Roy Cooper, or you can clarify exactly what measures was taken. And then Governor Roy Cooper had to fight and go to court, and he was victorious. But that was even kind of unusual, even compared towards North Carolina standards, for the legislator to try to remove some of the executive powers from the governor, or some type of power structure from the governor. So could you kind of elaborate a little bit on how did that happen, or what was the whole motive behind that particular measure?
Sure, I'll do my best.
Okay.
So North Carolina historically has, in comparison to other states, we tend to have a weaker executive branch than some other states. And to give a quick overview of that, in North Carolina, we tend to elect almost every office. So if you think of it as looking at the federal level, at the president has a cabinet of appointed officials who serve and head up a lot of these executive offices, whether that's the Department of Health and Human Services, or the Department of Transportation, or the Department of Defense. In North Carolina, a lot of those offices are elected, and part of that just goes back to North Carolina's history of being somewhat distrustful of centralized government. We want that that influence as close to the people as possible. So that is historically something that we've always done in North Carolina, is elected a lot of those things. It was during my lifetime. I'm not the I'm not exactly a spring chicken anymore. But it was during my lifetime that the governor was able to get the veto. Also, we had until my lifetime, the governor could only serve one 4-year term. So that has changed. The governor can now serve 2 4-year terms, and the governor now has a veto. So traditionally, most of the power has resided at the North Carolina General Assembly in the legislative branch. So you're correct. There was an effort, early in Governor Cooper's tenure for the General Assembly to take over some of the power of appointments and who gets to serve on boards and commissions and some of those types of things that went to court, and Governor Cooper was victorious. There is a good bit of natural tension of who gets to do what between those two branches of government. It's not necessarily unique to this particular time and space. That tension has occurred over the years, even when the majority of the General Assembly is of the same party as the governor. So there's always this tension of who gets to drive the ship, so to speak. We have definitely seen that kind of get a little more press, get a little more coverage as of late. But some of those tensions between the legislative branch and the executive branch are something that we've seen bubble up from time to time over our state's history. Hope that gives you a little bit of context.
Mm-hmm. Stan, I don't want to leave you out of the show, out of the conversation. Do you have any questions or any comments you want to address to our guest, Brian Etheridge?
No, I'm listening. It's quite fascinating to hear, the different things that go on in different, from different towns to different cities, and of course, different states and the structure. So, as I'm listening, it would sound odd to outsiders, mm-hmm. but clearly, if you're from North Carolina, this is not something odd or new.
Right.
But even given those challenges, and I think that's more, it sounds like more of the nature of human beings when working with one another, whether, the levels of trust, distrust, and power. But the ability to do what they've done speaks, I think, quite clearly to the pragmatic nature of North Carolina with this triangle and the willingness to sacrifice the now mm-hmm. for the long term, and that speaks to something that's, I think, quite unique. I don't know that would be easy to duplicate in other spaces and places because people want immediate gratification.
Right,
and
right.
It takes a lot of sacrifice on the part of a lot of people with a lot of different mindsets and agendas and interests. Yet they were able to accomplish that, and that's pretty powerful.
You mean when they established the research triangle?
Well, the vision that led to it, yes. Mm-hmm. Because as he says, if I'm listening correctly, 50 years of sacrifice to get to where they are now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we definitely saw that Research Triangle Park start to really take off in the 80s, 90s, the early aughts. There's certainly been growth, but it wasn't immediate. 5 years afterwards, folks going, "Oh my gosh, this is the best thing we've ever done." There was definitely some skepticism, and we've seen too in North Carolina. Not that I tend to be an optimist, but I'm not one that's going to look away from where we sometimes struggle. There are definitely pockets. There are areas of North Carolina that have done exceptionally well over the last number of years. As we mentioned earlier, the Research Triangle Park is one. Areas in the Piedmont, kind of Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem, that's kind of known as the Triad. The Charlotte metro region, obviously a huge center for business and the financial sector as well. And then Asheville, Wilmington. But there are parts of rural North Carolina that have really struggled as we've made this transition from kind of textiles, manufacturing, agribusiness to more folks, kind of moving to more urban centers, looking for those amenities, and folks growing up, going to college, getting a degree, going to work, and moving away from places. So we've definitely seen some challenges in rural communities, but it's been interesting because kind of coming out of the pandemic, you saw a lot of folks seeking life in a rural area, having some space, and we're seeing some areas of resurgence of folks seeking out the benefits of rural North Carolina and kind of making their way there. And I'm not sure if we could characterize it as a bit of a renaissance, but I think time will tell on that. But we feel very fortunate. I feel incredibly fortunate growing up in a small town and having the benefit of living in town, but having a family farm and kind of getting to see multiple perspectives of North Carolina, understanding what all goes into place and farming and the time and the stress and the effort there, but also seeing the flip side of that sometimes of life in a more urban environment. So that's where it goes back to, you build those relationships among folks from different sectors of the state, and it hopefully creates an environment where you get to some of those more pragmatic opportunities.
Well, you mentioned about the rural areas of North Carolina, and then now you kind of mentioned like the rural poverty structure that North Carolina still has. Would that be a contributing factor just of the size of North Carolina being, I think it's one of the 25th or 26th largest states in the country? And then you're mentioning most of the growth and development has kind of been centered around the central cities or the urban cities. Is there any attempt in North Carolina to kind of address the rural poverty, to upgrade the infrastructure and upgrade the whole technology base in the rural part of the state?
I think that's a great question. I appreciate the chance to kind of speak to that. So there are a number of things that have been in place for a number of years to speak directly to that. And then I'll hit on a couple of recent developments that I think could absolutely, really help us make some accelerated, growth in some of these initiatives. So folks may recall back in the 90s, there was a large settlement with the tobacco companies around transitioning folks away from farming tobacco, and North Carolina made a very strategic decision at that time. And a lot of farmers made the choice of we're gonna transition away from tobacco when the price supports were being we were exiting that process of having price supports for tobacco, and North Carolina was one of the top tobacco producing states in the country. Leaders understood that we needed to have a pathway for an economic transition, understanding that tobacco, the revenue that came from tobacco was a real economic engine for a lot of rural communities, and we needed to find a bridge, if you will. So we took a lot of that settlement money and created an organization known as the Golden Leaf Foundation. And the whole mission behind that is to make investments in rural communities. The majority of North Carolina is rural. More than 80 counties of our 100 counties are classified as rural. So the Golden Leaf Foundation, in partnerships with other foundations and nonprofits, in collaboration with our community colleges, our university system, our private colleges, universities, our elected officials, have been making targeted investments in infrastructure, whether that's economic incubators or rural broadband access, partnering with other groups to make some of those infrastructure changes. And with the new infrastructure law that was passed at the federal level last year, I think we're going to see some really substantial growth in things like broadband access, rural water and sewer expansion and upgrades. There are certainly communities that have lost tax base. But you've still got to provide, the basic necessities to your citizens: water, sewer, natural gas, electricity, and utilities. Broadband's now one of those basic necessities, as we saw coming out of the pandemic. Our kids need that in order to learn. Businesses need that in order to operate. So I think the coupling of, expansion of broadband, which is something there have been groups in North Carolina working on for a good number of years and have made some significant progress. I think that will accelerate with this new infrastructure law. And then in addition to that, we just made the decision here in North Carolina to expand Medicaid, which will be a huge help to a large number of North Carolina citizens who don't have access to health care. It's also going to help our rural hospitals, which have been struggling for a number of years. So we know that, when you look at social determinants of health, things like poverty and education and access to healthy food, there are a lot of multiple factors that go into helping our folks prosper. And having access to health care is a really important one to us. So we're very excited about that recent development as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, Brian, one thing that North Carolina is known for on the positive sense is, even though you have like a classification of being a red state, the Republican base and the Democratic base seems to work together towards businesses. Now, they may have a lot of differences in other areas of government in the state of North Carolina, but it seems like whenever it comes time to get a major business or some type of business expansion, or put together the right type of business climate to attract businesses, North Carolina seems to work together with the Republican base in the General Assembly and the Democratic base in the General Assembly to go along with Governor Roy Cooper, who is a Democratic governor. Has that always been the case in North Carolina, though?
I think there has been a general consensus of, let's find a way to help move the state forward. It definitely takes work. It has ebbed and flowed over time. Sometimes there are governors and legislatures that work a little better together. But as I said earlier in the program, sometimes the governor and the General Assembly, or the majority of the General Assembly, are of the same party, and it's a lot more tenuous. So I think we're fortunate in that regard, that by and large, the proof's kind of in the pudding. When you're ranked number one for business, that shows that folks are willing to find ways to collaborate, find bridges across divides to really solve some of those challenges, and to help recruit some of those organizations, some of those businesses to the state. Because they're seeing the end goal of creating opportunity and continuing to help transform not only North Carolina's economy, but culturally, it provides benefits as well. You're bringing folks from other parts of the country, other parts of the world to our state, and it's not a one-way exchange. We learn from them as well, and I'm really excited. Being a native North Carolinian, our big thing growing up, it was college basketball. It still is. But right now in the Triangle area, everybody's pretty excited about the Carolina Hurricanes, our NHL team, which have their roots in Connecticut, the Hartford Whalers. And I would have never guessed that we would be a hockey town growing up in a small town in North Carolina. But man alive, it is a part of the fabric of this community now, and it's something we're incredibly proud of, and folks are incredibly passionate about it. Mm-hmm. So it just proves too, folks find places change, people change, and we're grateful for all that folks have poured into North Carolina over the years.
Well, Stan, let me ask you a question on that topic about the hockey team. When the Whalers left Hartford and Connecticut, did you see that, if you know anything about the deal or just your opinion, Did you look at it as what Connecticut and Hartford was not able to do to keep the Whalers, or was it something better that North Carolina had to offer to attract the Whalers? I don't know if you had ever thought about it on that scope.
Well, I never really thought about it in the terms that you're talking about. But I mean, you had as one of our guests was,
Howard Baldwin.
Howard Baldwin.
Okay.
So he made it very clear that you make your money on a sports franchise by selling the team.
Mm-hmm.
So, I kind of get the impression he was trying to cash out on the wealth of the team, and things were changing here in Hartford, so the team left.
Right.
It's a gain for
Raleigh, obviously.
Raleigh, but not a gain. I guess a loss for Hartford. But if you compare the two, if you compare the mindset of the two areas,
Mm-hmm.
that speaks more to what happened to the Whalers in Hartford than anything else. And so, and he mentioned this. It was after the collapse of the Civic Center roof, and when they rebuilt that, everything was right in place. That mindset that was in Hartford is not here anymore.
Right.
Something happened. I don't know what happened, but something happened. But that short window of time when people were being practical, pragmatic, where they were thinking about the overall, what's the best trajectory of the city, those things seem to have been in place like they are now down there and have been for a while.
Right.
And so I would imagine if people are using, the triangle as a case study and things that they would like to, look at and try to model, it's more than just the final outcome. It's how you get there, what's necessary, how you connect people together, working together, putting petty differences aside, because oftentimes here in Hartford, it's the petty difference that'll keep something from going forward. And as long as that kind of attitude exists, you're not going to go anywhere.
Right. But keep up the fight, what
Right.
you're trying to do as running for mayor also.
Well, but I'm simply suggesting that it takes a certain level of maturity that is necessary, and that's apparently there.
Right.
This is what makes you number one in the country. It's not by accident.
Okay. Well, let me get back to our guest, though, and that's a good observation that you just outlined as well. Brian, is it kind of, because everybody looks at North Carolina and say, well, you have two major metro areas. You have either Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, and if you didn't have those two particular areas, maybe North Carolina wouldn't be growing the way that it's growing. Is that a fair or unfair or just a incorrect assessment of the state? Because you have other areas like the film, television, tourism area in Wilmington of North Carolina. It's not as big a city as Charlotte or Raleigh, but it's still a very, successful area of North Carolina. So is there more to North Carolina than just the two big areas of Charlotte and Raleigh?
Absolutely. And those two areas of the state are obviously, hugely impactful from both a business, education, healthcare, and cultural standpoint. But to your point, Jonathan, there are areas of the state that are increasing. If you want to use a business term, they're increasing their market share. So the Wilmington, kind of southeastern part of North Carolina, as you mentioned, has a rich history in the film industry. Iron Man 3, part of that was filmed in Wilmington, going back years and years and years. Drew Barrymore starred in Firestarter. So there are lots of TV and movie projects that have been based in North Carolina over the years. That waned a little bit a number of years ago, and we're bringing some of those incentives back, but we're very fortunate to have that industry in Wilmington, and obviously being on the coast, that is very attractive for a lot of folks. just south of Wilmington, Brunswick County is one of the fastest growing counties in the country. There are a lot of folks from all across the country that are wanting to move there for the purposes of retirement. So we've seen a ton of growth in that area, and that's just outside of Wilmington, North Carolina. We've also seen a lot of growth around Asheville, in the mountains and the areas around Asheville. Folks want to be outside. They want to experience our natural resources, and it's our job to be good stewards of our land, our air, and our water. And folks are seeking those opportunities out. It doesn't hurt that you've got higher education opportunities in Asheville, that you've got tremendous natural forests and tourist attractions there, but you've also got amazing restaurants and a wonderful cultural and entrepreneurial spirit there as well. So we're fortunate in that regard. And then, the Triad I mentioned earlier is a real hub for transportation. FedEx, Honda Jet, Boom have all announced plans to come there. And then you're seeing Toyota has announced the plan to build a EV battery facility just outside of the Triad. VinFast, which is a Vietnamese automaker, has announced plans, and Moncure, which is just about 30 minutes south of Raleigh, to build their first ever U.S.-based EV manufacturing facility. They'll be making electric vehicles, and there's a lot of excitement around that. So there are pockets of North Carolina that aren't just Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, the Triangle, and the Charlotte metro region. There's pockets of that prosperity and opportunities for growth all around North Carolina. And some of those areas that traditionally, hadn't gotten a lot of press coverage are starting to really make some waves. There are some wonderful small towns, places like Rutherfordton in western North Carolina, places like Tarboro in eastern North Carolina, where you've got pockets of entrepreneurs that are kind of creating some very neat destination-based opportunities, and folks from the Raleighs, the Charlottes, and other places are looking to venture out. Another great example is taking things that may have been seen as a liability a number of years ago, and with some creativity, really creating some opportunities. So, North Carolina, as you heard me say earlier, we had a lot of textiles and manufacturing facilities, and in pockets all around North Carolina, they are taking those former mills and turning them into apartments, turning them into business incubators, turning them into restaurants, breweries. There's a great one just outside of Raleigh in Rocky Mount called Rocky Mount Mills, where we've had a number of events for Leadership North Carolina. And you just create this sense of community, and it's envisioned to do that. So we saw that in Durham around the American Tobacco Project. And it really led to a renaissance of downtown Durham, and with the Durham Bulls minor league baseball team and a lot of businesses kind of centering around that American Tobacco Project. And you've seen various projects like that in other small towns around the state where folks have seen this model work. They may be using historical tax credits to reinvent what those structures could be, and are lending that creativity and that capital to create a sense of community, to create a sense of place, to help grow the economy, but also to help give new purpose to structures that were at one point lying dormant.
Well, Brian, how would people look at the minimum wage, though, that North Carolina still has at $7.25? Because here in Connecticut, it's going to move up, I think next month, to $15 an hour. And you have a lot of companies here in Connecticut that actually pays employees $15 an hour. I say that to say, does North Carolina have a job market that's kind of locked people in to the minimum wage, or just barely above minimum wage, that you think is very detrimental to that state or hurting that state in some areas that you would like to see change?
I think that's a great question. So traditionally, we've been a low, a somewhat low density state, if you will, around unionization. We're one of the lowest in the country. So, we're a right to work state. And I think you're seeing a lot of businesses that are speaking to conversations around a minimum wage or a wage that's somewhere in the $15 to $17 per hour timeline or framework, and not relying on the minimum wage. So I think that's a lot of where the conversation is going in North Carolina, is not necessarily relying on that policy to be changed, but folks in the private sector going ahead and making some adjustments, knowing that we need to make some changes to make sure that folks are able to, feed their families, educate their kids, provide childcare. But I think there are broader conversations that still need to happen. To be very honest, is are we creating systems? Are we creating structures that are going to enable the majority of North Carolinians to be able to move from an area where they may be living in poverty to advancing out of that? And that has definitely been a challenge. And I think we've looked at studies. There's a great study, the Chetty study, a number of years ago, that looked at economic mobility. That if you're born poor in North Carolina, the likelihood that you will move into middle class or even beyond. And in a lot of communities in our state, things like transportation, access to food, access to education, access to health care can sometimes be barriers to that. And I think there's definitely work to be done. And we've got great folks working across sectors. And that's another illustration of kind of the pragmatic bipartisanship that we've seen in the state. We've got an organization known as My Future NC, which realizes, look, we've got to have 2 million people by 2030 who need a credential, whether that's a certificate, a 2-year degree, or a 4-year degree, to meet the job demands that we have. And those jobs need to be, sustainable, meaning they need to be able to provide for their families. And that's really important to us as well as a society, and working across sectors and across communities, both urban and rural, in partnership with the community colleges, the UNC system, the business sector, K-12 education, early childhood education, independent colleges and universities. So kind of getting everybody on the same page, working in the same direction.
Well, again, from the Leadership North Carolina's perspective, the upward mobility and the inclusion, those are two of the weaker areas that North Carolina consists of, that you're not really a state that you can look at and say, well, if you're born poor, the chances are you moving upward mobility to a more, wealthy or more prosperous life is very unlikely. Is that an attempt that Leadership North Carolina is looking at to see that how can they actually make some changes? You had mentioned some things that North Carolina is trying to do to address that aspect, but sometimes that part of North Carolina gets left out when you're doing these surveys about being the #1 state for business and business climate. That's great, but if you rank low towards upward mobility, that's telling me or telling people that a lot of people might be missing out on these great opportunities in the state of North Carolina.
I'm glad you brought that up. And I think one of the most important things is, as we know in a lot of areas of life, what you measure is what you work toward and get accomplished. And I think one of the first things was acknowledging that we've got a lot of North Carolinians in several communities that don't have the opportunity for economic mobility or upward economic mobility. So I think to that point, at Leadership North Carolina, that's one of the things we talk about that's kind of woven through a number of our sessions. You heard me mention earlier that we do 7 sessions. One of those is orientation. One is government, economic development, environment, education, health, human services. But the 7th one for us is inclusive leadership, because we need to understand various systems, and we need to build relationships with other leaders who see the world differently than we do and have a different set of experiences if we're going to work to make sure that we're providing a more prosperous North Carolina, and that we are not comfortable leaving segments of our fellow citizens behind, that we want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for economic mobility.
Well, when you have major companies like Apple and Google expanding or moving to North Carolina, I don't think, first of all, the employees are going to be locked into a low or wage in those type of companies. But wouldn't that also create either a problem or a challenge to say, well, is the skill set available in North Carolina to meet the demands like you just mentioned when you're getting high-tech companies like Apple and Google? Or is there some other attempt to really just, I guess, attract people from other parts of the country to come to North Carolina and be part of the new expansion, and maybe not really be committed towards trying to work with the educational attainment currently in North Carolina to get people to that particular opportunities that exist there?
To your point, there are definitely folks that are moving here already. We're seeing it every day, and we're excited by that. But the other piece to your previous point is, making sure that we're being really intentional around that education piece. So when you've got large organizations that are bringing a large number of jobs, this goes back to one of the pieces of our conversation that I was so excited to share. Is this goes back to that visionary leadership of the university system, the community colleges in North Carolina. And there is such an incredibly strong working relationship between these new employers that are bringing jobs to North Carolina and our folks at our community college system who have customized training, who say to the businesses, even before they come here, tell us what you need, so that we can create customized training programs to help get you the number of employees with the skills that you need, so that you're not having to hopefully not having to go to other parts of the country and bring those folks here. We'd love nothing more than to grow those kinds of folks right here in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. So, we're starting to see that with the VinFast project and our community colleges across the state who are working on customized training that are very much attuned to what the needs are in specific communities. So, Pratt and Whitney is expanding and putting in a aviation engine facility in Asheville. They are working very closely with the community colleges in that area to create curriculum and to provide training for folks that may eventually come in to work at that plant once it's up and running. So that's just one example of numerous ones of kind of meeting the needs of the business community and tailoring your curriculum to what their needs are so that you can grow that workforce. We're seeing that across the country. That is not unique to North Carolina. Those workforce demands and the shortages in workforce are a big challenge in a lot of places, and it leads to issues around supply chain management. And I'm just so grateful to for the leadership in our community college system and our university system and our private colleges and universities who are collaborating with one another around meeting those needs.
Brian, what about diversity? You hear that word mentioned a lot in different levels of businesses and companies. But when you look at North Carolina, you have a lot of people from different races moving to North Carolina. You have a lot of international influence of people moving to North Carolina. So North Carolina has really changed, or is currently changing from its traditional beginning stages. But is North Carolina, on your, I guess, assessment, a state that has good diversity, that it includes other different races and ethnic groups of people into the mainstream economy?
I think we're making progress in that way, and I think the important thing to remember when you're talking about issues around diversity is there's not an end to this. It is always a continuum, and we can always continue to find more and additional ways to help folks feel welcome, to help folks feel included, to help folks participate. So I don't look at it as, okay, we've checked this box and we're done. We're always kind of looking at opportunities for self-improvement, and Leadership North Carolina is no different from that. We continually look each and every year of how we can continue to improve the product, if you will, of what we're providing the 55 members of each Leadership North Carolina class. But I think, as the state changes, there's naturally going to be the opportunity to learn from one another. And I think what we hope to do is foster curiosity. And a lot of that comes down to building relationships, person to person. That it starts at that grassroots level. And one of the things we talk about a lot at Leadership North Carolina is the importance of 3 cups of coffee. Is invite somebody to coffee who sees the world differently than you do. They may have grown up in a very different set of experiences, but invite them to coffee, and it takes 3 cups. And the first cup is you're just going to simply invite them to share their story, how they came to see the world the way they do. The second cup of coffee is you flip that script and you're sharing your story. And then by the 3rd cup of coffee, you understand where one another is coming from, and you can start building some rapport, start building some trust, and finding areas not only where you agree, but areas where there are honest and legitimate differences, and finding ways to work through some of those. So we're big believers in 3 cups of coffee.
Brian, that was an excellent way to end this particular segment. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and I give you a very high grade ranking for your excellent presentation this morning, and you was able to answer all of the questions I was able to ask you, and I really appreciate that. And again, I wish you and Leadership North Carolina the best of luck in the near future. I'm kind of interested and curious where North Carolina and even where Connecticut is going to rank for 2023. Hopefully that survey by CNBC and other studies come out very quickly. But again, as I ask every particular guest every single week, if there's any last closing comments or last words you would like to leave the audience, feel free to do so.
I just want to simply thank everybody for their engagement this morning, for their attention. And from all of us at Leadership North Carolina, we're just so grateful for leaders who are, curious, but engaged and informed, and are interested in helping help move our state forward. We don't have a prescription of what that looks like. But when you get good people together from different backgrounds and different abilities, good things happen. And there's a level of intentionality to that. And I just want to thank you gentlemen so much for the gift of your time this morning, for the chance to have a conversation to start my week off right, and the gift of your listeners investing their time in this morning.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to join us, and continued success and Godspeed.
Okay. Take care, Brian. All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. You're welcome. All right.
Great interview.
Yeah, he came across real sharp and honest, accurate. Never heard of Leadership North Carolina, so I'm not going to sit here and say I know too much about the agency or organization, but it seems like to me they're serious and committed towards making the state a better state in different areas, and doing their role. I guess that's the best way to leave it on.
Yeah, there's a Leadership Greater Hartford, and it does kind of the same thing, but this is like on steroids. So it covers such a much bigger, broader area and segment or swath of human potential. Great interview. There's a lot to be learned there, an awful lot.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, I want to see what the survey is going to come out for 2023. I don't think the state is going to slip that much. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be number 1 again, but I don't think it's going to drop. And not to lose sight, Connecticut has some strong areas that we rank high in towards education. They claim, I think our healthcare system is great. I think we get knocked for our business climate here.
Well, we get knocked for our business climate for a reason.
Right. Well, I've been saying that's the area that we seem to always fall low on, and our infrastructure.
And that's it. It's important. There's a reason why. There's a reason why. So, I thought we were saying about Pratt Whitney is very interesting. Pratt Whitney is what? 5 miles from here?
East Hartford.
East Hartford?
Yep, up.
What? 15 miles in Middletown.
They do have one in Middletown. You
Right.
correct.
Commercial plant is in Middletown. Military is in East Hartford. But supply chain, labor force, all of those things that go into making your place a great place, and the willingness of people to work, the willingness of people to learn. And so I don't want to rob anybody else of opportunities that are presented by United Technologies. Well, what is it now? It used to be UTC, but I think Raytheon got bought out or merged with Pratt. Nonetheless, long story short, they're not doing that here.
Mm-hmm.
That's my point. And there has to be a reason why. And that needs to be looked at. What does Connecticut offer companies to come here? In light of the fact that it does get cold here too.
Yeah.
And there are other expenses. So, if you want your state to be a place that folks want to come to from all over the world, then you have to do something to make it a place that people want to come to.
Well, I don't know if you heard, but yesterday I was looking at a news segment, and I think Electric Boat is going to have a major expansion, and they're looking right now that they need 5,000 employees.
That they've been needing 5,000 employees for at least a year, because they had a big float in the Puerto Rican Day Parade asking for 5,000 employees. The parade's coming around in July of this year. So that's been a very public campaign that they've had. They've had television advertising, all kinds of outreach, which means they're having a hard time getting the workforce they need from here.
Well, I think the key is they mentioned that it's a skill set issue, because you can, let's say, I don't know if I'm not going to sit here and say you need 5,000 people to work at Amazon, but let's just say Amazon is expanding and there's going to be future job openings at Amazon. Maybe it's a lot easier to get people to work for Amazon just because of the skill set level.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you 100%, which speaks to the problem. It doesn't take a whole lot of rocket science to be able to move stuff around in Amazon. I'm not trying to diminish. All right. But Amazon's also replacing a lot of people with robots.
Right.
Had a big thing in the paper last week about the new robotic help that they've got online there. And that will increase. But it does take a skill set to be able to work at Electric Boat.
It does.
Part of that skill set is the capacity to be able to be teachable, working within systems, reading. 61% of the adults in Hartford are functionally illiterate.
Yeah.
That means they can't read an ATM machine. These are things you can't ignore and expect to see some sort of change happen. So if companies don't just move someplace because of a good advertising campaign, they move someplace because there's something there that they can that's going to benefit them. Yeah. So they know what the workforce here is like. They know what the educational capacity of the people here is like. So where's the intentionality on the part of local government? Because of course we live in Hartford, and we can really, if we can impact anything, it'll be the local government more than it is the state government. So where are we trying to, and where's the evidence of us trying to make those kinds of changes so that our workforce is sought after and desired? And that's what brings companies.
Well, just keep in mind, when you get into Electric Boat, Pratt and Whitney, it's almost, it could be similar like the infrastructure of the building trades industry. You have a high problem of finding enough people wanting to enter the building trades industries, the younger people, because they don't look at that trade or the trades anymore as glamorous. You got social media, you got different ways to generate revenue or generate money. So the skill set problem and the school system problem, yes, that is a big focal point of the problem and the solution. But if you have young people who are just not interested in becoming welders, I guess, for Electric Boat and occupations on that level. You just may not have that interest.
Right, but there's a whole lot more than just a welder at Electric Boat or at Pratt Whitney.
Mm-hmm.
There's computer aided design. There's 1,000 different things you can do at Pratt Whitney.
Right.
I'm not even scratching the surface. From maintenance to floor maintenance, building maintenance, infrastructure, electronics, technology. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. If these companies can't get the people here, you know what they're going to do? They leave.
Yeah.
And they take their tax contribution with them. It's not, well, they can't find the people. Are we preparing people to want to go into those places? You heard what he was saying about the military is their number 2 major contributor to their business success. The first, I think he said, was agricultural.
Yeah.
The second was military. So they understand, the contributions of the United States military. So a whole part of their vision being just practical is, how do we make our state a place that makes the people who are here, one, feel good about being here, want to stay here and grow here. And that also helps those that are looking to say, well, businesses want to stay there. Maybe we want to go there too. And the young people who are associated with military are involved in technology and have a discipline to go to work, see work as a way of making money to sustain their families as opposed to something glamorous. It's just work isn't glamorous. Work is it's something you do to make money. That doesn't mean you can't have fun or it can't be a glamorous job. But even the glamour jobs, like the arts, entertainment, movie making,
right,
is there's a fight against that in Connecticut with the film tax credits and the desire to build studios. I had a conversation over the weekend with your friend Mr. Black.
I was just gonna mention that Jonathan Black.
Right.
Had a conversation.
I had a long conversation with him at an industry mixer over the weekend.
Okay.
All right, and they're fighting. They're fighting to be able to maintain growth. It's as though the state is working against them. This could turn into a multi-billion-dollar industry here.
Right.
It should be by now, but because of pettiness and knuckleheadism, they moved against Jim Amon's tax thing.
Oh, okay.
Remember that?
I do remember that.
So those are the long-term consequences of not working for the greater good of the whole, as opposed to being petty, political, and get-evenism with them.
Well, Stan, like I say, I'm not going to sit here, by not being in North Carolina, I'm not going to sit here and say the grass is greener someplace else. I know the meeting or the press conference that was held this past week that the African American Alliance held towards MDC, the Metropolitan District Commission, it didn't seem like it turned out towards what are the African American Alliance is looking for, what are people in the community are looking for, towards the bill to oversight or audit MDC is going in the right direction, likely to pass. I don't know if we look at that as a setback or just...
It's not a setback at all. By no means is it a setback. And that, the African American Alliance was in support of 1139.
1139, okay.
Because 1139 was going to put some oversight at the MDC, which... After 50 years, there are major problems that still exist. All we want is a functioning organization. How they get there is irrelevant, just as long as they get there. So if they get there because people are looking at them and putting pressure on them, then that's good. The bill does not have to pass for them to be accountable.
Okay. So there's no problem. I mean, I guess. Is there anything you can sense that?
I mean, it wasn't our legislation.
No,
I mean, we didn't craft the legislation.
But you support it.
We were just in support of as a whole lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask my never to be humble opinion, if that bill were to go to the floor, it would pass.
Right.
It's not a matter of it's not popular. This is political.
But it hasn't gone to the floor, though.
It's not going to go to the floor.
It's not going to the floor, right?
No. And that's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
We want our press conference was to call for the bill. We want the bill called. It's not going to happen. So.
Well, I think again the main goal at some point is to correct the problems with the flooding,
and that is going to happen.
That's going to happen. So that's moving in the right direction. From what
let me rephrase that. The sewage being in people's houses, that and people being made whole. That's the ultimate aim.
Mm-hmm. Now, whether the people should get funded, I don't know if that was looked at. Some type of grant money. Should the people that have lost money towards the damage that has happened in their homes, whether they're going to be funded back.
If you can repair people's foundations, crumbling foundations because of bad cement, then you can most certainly find a way to fix people's houses where sewage is coming into their house and it's not their fault.
Right. Well, that would be like a grant set aside money. That has nothing to do with MDC. So at least you can work on it. You don't have to go through MDC, hopefully, to be able to get the money to repair the people's homes if there's going to be some type of statewide grant.
But then we don't know what there's going to be.
We don't know what it's going to be.
Okay. Right. We're advocating to make these people whole. Repair the damage, make the people whole, and stop the sewage from being in the water when there is flooding.
Mm-hmm.
No one on the planet has the capacity to stop flooding. So I think that piece, that language in there needs to be changed in terms of narrative. Flooding is not the MDC's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Sewage in the flooding is the MDC's fault.
Right.
So, when it rains, the rain doesn't have anywhere to go, you get flooding. We have flooding all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
They can mitigate flooding. We have dike systems around the harbor. We have pumps around the harbor. So there's ways to mitigate. And that's something that needs to be addressed and looked at. But most certainly you can keep sewage out of people's basements.
Mm-hmm.
That's an issue. It happens in other parts of the city, in other parts of the region. Why can't it happen in North Hartford?
Right. Well, I've tried to pitch some ideas to the chairman of MDC, William DeBella, for whatever it's worth. I've been trying to network through him and other sources to Scott Jellison, the CEO of MDC. I mean, saying, okay, where things are going to move forward towards even the communication level, towards having people get the right type of communication. William DeBella claims that they are planning to do that. I would like to see, if it's possible, minority contractors get a fair share of upcoming projects.
All of these things are possible, Jonathan. This is a fight that's not new.
Not new.
This is not a new fight.
Right.
Your brain freeze over having this conversation.
Yeah.
I've heard this conversation since 2007. I mean,
with the Clean Water Project.
My mind is frozen when it comes to this topic.
You don't like to really go through this.
Right. I don't like exercises in futility.
Okay.
Show me the fix. Show me the fix.
Right.
I want to see where it's been fixed. I don't want to hear what you're going to do, what you plan to do, what's on the board. We need an engineer. There's all kinds of reasons why it isn't done yet.
And that's exactly what they come back and say.
Right. So when will it be fixed? What are the consequences for not fixing it?
Mm-hmm.
And what's in place to enforce the consequences?
Yeah.
Those are the questions. When will it be fixed? What do we use to measure the fix? What are the consequences if it isn't fixed? And how do we enforce that? Put that on a piece of paper. You put that on a 3x5 card.
Yeah. And so far, it hasn't been put on a piece of paper. I think that's where some of your stumbling blocks are running up against. I mean, I'm being told
because there's more. You need to illuminate what can't be refuted.
Mm-hmm.
If this doesn't happen by May 12th,
exactly,
I give you $1,000 check.
You mean them paying you?
No.
Okay.
I'm saying make it that plain.
Okay.
There's a penalty for if you don't pay your if you don't pay your water bill on time,
Right.
you get a late fee.
Yeah.
If you don't pay your water bill at all, they'll put a lien on your house.
Exactly.
Your cell phone. Everyone understands the consequence of not paying your cell phone bill on time. They cut your phone off.
Right.
There's no debate.
Yes.
No, if this, that, and the third. You know exactly what will happen if you don't comply. So you comply and you pay your bill every month.
Right. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's because NBC is just such a powerful. I mean, I'm not saying that as an excuse, but they seem to be a very powerful.
They are a powerful
Okay,
agency.
so you're not going up against a weak link. You know,
they're a powerful
strong
agency.
lawyers.
I'm not trying to take their power away.
Uh-huh.
I just want delivery of service, Jonathan.
Right,
That's
right.
all anybody wants.
Right. And they'll come back and tell you that they are delivering the services, that, you know, you got to go through deep. You know, they got to do certain things.
Well, you know, I
And
don't
then
want
it's
to.
the city of
I'm
Hartford.
not here to plead their case or
exactly.
anyone else's case. We have program right here, the morning show
Right.
of everybody's point of view in this discussion.
Exactly. That's true.
All I want is to see the people be made whole.
Well, like I said, I mean, your African American Alliance, you held the press
We had a
conference.
press. That's all we can do is
That's all you
hold
can
a press conference and make demands. That's all we can do. If we had a magic wand, then things would be very different.
Well, that's your approach. You know, you want to get things done. You know, you don't. I mean, I know you have to go through the process sometime of having press conferences and meetings and discussions, because that's still part of the process. But at the end of the day, you'd like to see something. And not to take anything away that things are not improving. I think what Bridget Prince is doing towards bringing in the attention and the leadership and getting the EPA involved has been very instrumental, and definitely something that you can't take lightly. And I don't know if it's just more support or more other factors that you got to still have to really get the issue resolved. But I think as long as you're, you know, addressing it to the full, you know, to the fullness of it, to your best of abilities, and you got the backing of other different agencies and other different support, then that's definitely a good start. You know, now people want to see things, obviously, if you're dealing with the problems of sewage in your homes, and this lady can't live in a home since, what's the lady name? Since December the 4th, I believe, that's been affected by.
Well, she's becoming quickly a poster child for the issue, but her issue is slightly different than the one that we're talking about.
Okay.
There are hundreds of people who have problems.
Right.
And those people need to be made whole. Period. It's not a long conversation.
Yeah.
Fix it.
Yeah. Or just give me the money to get my house. If I'm staying in
Fix the problem.
Fix the problem.
Period.
Yes.
Period. Nothing else. Everything else is a sidebar conversation to the problem, and that's what keeps happening. Fix the problem.
Right.
Period.
Fix the problem means pay for it. I mean, if you got damage done to your home,
No.
that's not.
Not necessarily pay. Fix. Fix the problem. Once we're getting into the weeds, but however, fix the problem or pay me. See, once you get into now I don't need to fix the problem.
Okay.
I could pay you. Oh, well, if money becomes the issue, well, the money is the reason I can't fix the problem.
Okay.
Fix it.
Right.
Fix it.
Okay. So if you fix the problem,
then there is no more problem.
but if I owe money of the damage, how does that problem still get corrected though? You say fix the problem. Okay, your home has been damaged. You can't live in the home. You're paying a amount.
That's part of the problem.
Okay.
That's part of the problem. right?
Part of the problem.
Right. So if you're on if the doctor takes out your spleen by accident, and it causes all kinds of other stuff, then you need to be made whole.
Right.
As best they can, put a new spleen in you, fix you. But whatever else happened as a result, you're compensated for that as well.
Well, that's what you said, compensate.
Right. So the problem, I was whole before the problem. I want the problem fixed, and I want to be made whole. Fix the problem.
Right.
Make it right. That's all we're asking.
Well, it seems like the state legislators, this state senator or state rep Derek Slapp, he's in favor of the bill of the auditing of MDC, but he seems to be concerned and supportive of the people too. So
auditing the MDC is muscle to get them to do what they should be doing. Auditing the MDC has nothing to do with fixing the problem.
Okay. But that's why I think that grant money is, again, maybe the grant money is not fixing the problem, but that's just compensating people.
Well, the grant money would fix the problem, but the amount of the money they're asking for is something that people are balking at. So now you create a whole nother issue. Every time you add something to the solution, you add opportunity to move away from the fix.
Okay.
So fix the problem.
Fix the problem, yeah.
Right. Then it becomes a chess match, and a matching wits in political this is politics. It's neither good or bad. It's political. These are political decisions. And they're political decisions made by people elected to office. People elected to office have tremendous authority and power. And so political decisions are made sometimes not for the best interest of the people, but for the best interest of those who are exercising political power.
Well, just going to be, I don't know if it's already been a campaign issue. I don't know if these questions have been addressed.
These questions have come up on the mayoral campaign, but at the end of the day, they've come up, but all that does is bring light to a problem that everyone knows exists.
Okay. So if a panelist asks, should the city of Hartford pay for certain damages and fix the problem that the water, and I believe the city of Hartford and MDC have both been held responsible by EPA. So now if the city of Hartford, like the mayor, what role would you as the mayor play if you are to become elected mayor in making sure that this environmental issues or so-called environmental racisms be addressed and corrected moving forward? Maybe a panelist may ask some of the mayoral candidates that type of question.
That's a good question to ask, because the answer may not be what people want to hear.
Right.
Because there's actually a role and a job of being mayor. It's different from being an activist.
Okay.
Because now you are responsible for protecting the overall interests of the entity called Hartford, Connecticut, which is an incorporated entity.
Yes.
And it's been said that we and someone else is responsible. So now what has happened politically is there are two people responsible, and both sides are going to claim that the other side has more culpability than we do. So why should we pick up the cost? And that's exactly where you're at.
So again,
the mayor is not a sovereign. He's not a king. There are rules.
Right.
Suffice it enough to say that everything should be done to make these people whole. And that's not happening. It's not happening. When the city and other entities want to make people whole, they make people whole. So it's been done in the past, means it could be done right now. That someone is choosing not to move this agenda forward. All of these decisions, for the most part, are political. And as such, they can be, the political decision could be to make it work, get it done, or it could be, well, we're not going to do it.
Right. Because it's either one or the other.
Exactly. Right.
Well, again, you said the issue has already been addressed at mayoral forums, and again, it may not.
It's come up. It hasn't come up as a hard discussion, but it has come up.
It has come up. Okay.
Right. People have spoken to the issue. It has not come up as a hard issue. It came up at the one we just had at with the AKAs and Western Civic Association, along with the STO. These three organizations sponsored the last mayoral candidates forum, which was held at the Connecticut Historical Society on 1 Elizabeth Street. And it came up, but it came up at the very end.
Okay.
It turned into quite an exchange. But the event ended, and I mean it was a hard end. There weren't even closing comments. Like everybody usually gets like 2 minutes or 3 minutes to make closing statements. It ended with that question, and everybody it was over. Yeah.
Well, again, I mean, I just think it's an important part. I mean, I'm not directly affected by the problem, but again, you got to be concerned of the people that are affected, of having damages done to your homes, and having this problem if you live in a flood zone or whatever particular area that could have issues with flooding in your basement and then other damages of sewer issues. You want to make sure that the best is being done to prevent these type of problems that could happen.
No.
Well, I'll tell you, if I'm a homeowner,
we want it fixed.
Yes.
Because everything else is a conversation, Jonathan. And the city is known for conversations when it comes to problems. And I've heard this problem since 2007.
Yeah, you want it fixed, Stan, but if you have a home and your home has issues that could be flooded, you at least want, if I'm a homeowner and I'm going to buy a home and it's, let's say, whatever machine that you can have installed, a basement flooding system or whatever, okay, it may be expensive. It may be $10,000 to purchase this particular product. But in the case of a flood or flooding in your basement, it works towards, I guess, sucking the water out. This is a very important piece that you could buy or have installed.
A sump pump.
Sump pump, right. So I don't know if, again, that's fixing the problem or just preventing the problem. Maybe more preventing a problem down the line of having something like that installed. You buy a home.
The sump pump will pump water out of your basement that comes into the basement.
Right.
These are usually events that are relatively short-lived during a heavy rain.
Okay.
So water's coming into the basement. It's overwhelming. And so you pump the water outside where the water's coming from.
Right.
At some point, you could have so much water that it doesn't matter whether you have a sump pump.
It doesn't even matter. Okay.
Because that's flooding. The water's coming from somewhere, the sky. The sewage is mixing with the water and backing into the house through the sewer system.
Yes.
It's not my sewage. It shouldn't be in my house. So they need to have a way to stop the sewage from getting in the house during a flooding event.
Right.
One way is you can separate the sewage from the regular water so that the sewage is in a separate place. Or you could stop the water from coming into the house through a backflow valve.
Right.
A lot of houses don't have backflow valves. If they put the backflow valves in every house, it would be very, very expensive. So someone doesn't want to pay for that.
Yeah.
There is a fix.
Well, you just said it. Someone doesn't want to pay for it. I mean, there's a way to prevent it.
So fix it.
Yeah.
Fix it.
But when you say fix it, then the people that's held responsible needs to fix it. If the city and MDC is being
that's
found,
that's as I sit here right now on this time and this day in my position, yes, the city and the MDC can fix this.
Right. So let's just find out what they plan to do. I mean, that's the best way.
Well, that's a conversation we've been having since 2007.
Yeah.
We don't need to find out what they're going to do. They need to do it.
No, but they haven't been held responsible since 2000 by the
They
EPA.
have been held.
They have
There's
been-
consent decrees, just like the one they had for Centron versus Vaughn. There's
Okay. So they was held guilty before, or they was held.
It's not a matter of guilt. It's a matter of do it.
Okay.
Make it happen. So who has the authority to roll up in that place, point a finger and say, if you don't do this, here's the consequence?
Mm-hmm.
That's what the bill was leaning toward.
Towards, right.
So the consequence has been taken away.
Yeah.
The threat to make a change that leads to an outcome is gone.
Right. With the bill not being.
If there's no threat, then there's nothing to compel me to do what needs to be done other than some sort of moral high bar that I attain to reach. For most people, if they can't reach the moral high bar, then trying is the best they can do.
Mm-hmm.
But trying isn't reaching it.
Right.
And so as long as you're trying to do the best, a good faith effort, we've come to a place in Hartford where good faith effort is accepted as accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work in my book.
Right.
You trying is great,
But again,
admirable, but you fail to deliver.
Mm-hmm. But the bill not being brought to the floor, that's the key missing piece, though, why it's not going to be able to get a chance to get voted on. Because, like you say, it would have passed, obviously, if it would have been brought to the floor. I think Speaker of the House, Matt Ritter, was going to be supportive of
He's
the bill.
not supportive of the bill.
Oh, he's not supportive of the bill?
No.
Oh, okay. So even if the bill was brought to the House, then how would the bill be able to get passed if the Speaker of the House is not supportive of the bill? Wouldn't he have a lot of?
He has the power to call bills to the floor. So does the president, of the Senate, President Pro Tem of the Senate. Yeah, I think that's Senate leadership. There are people who have the capacity to call bills to the floor. That's the right of the chair.
Okay.
If it doesn't get called to the floor, then it won't get voted on.
Okay.
These are political, parliamentary moves and procedures that you can do to prevent something from going forward that you may not like or that others may not like, and put the pressure on you to make sure that it doesn't happen. It's the system. The system does work. It doesn't always work in the way that we may want, but the system works. Because if it passes, there's going to be people upset that it passed.
Right.
Someone ain't going to be happy. That's a given.
Well, more likely MDC is not going to be happy.
And MDC is a very powerful entity. And if they're unhappy, a lot of other people are going to be unhappy.
Oh, okay.
It's political.
Political, yeah. So sometimes you got to tell people the truth, what's really going on.
We know what's going on. Everybody knows what's going on. So all you can do is what? Try. But try doesn't get it fixed.
Right. Well, that's why I'm wondering, what it was. You say it wasn't a setback, but
it's not a set. I don't consider the alliance does not consider this a setback. Different people have different ways they measure certain things. It's not a setback by any stretch of the imagination for us.
But what is it? A challenge? I mean, how do you look at it?
You contend for an issue. You do the best that you can. You fight all the way to the end. And then when the fight is over, you find another avenue and you push forward.
Okay.
It's just another step along the way.
All right. Well, if you don't classify it as a setback, it's not a setback. I'm just saying.
No.
I thought it would be looked at as a setback, but you saying the African American Alliance? You only speaking for the African American Alliance.
I'm only speaking for the African American Alliance.
That it's not a setback towards the African American Alliance. Now, whether other people feel that way, that's involved, homeowners, they may see it differently.
Well, I'm sure they may see it differently, but I don't know actually that I can't say that there are amendments to the bill that could cause certain things to happen. The amendment to the bill requires the bill to move forward. Now, they could put amendments on other bills, and there could be success. But what they could do and what they do are two different things. So we're way beyond what one could do. What is going to happen? What's the fix?
Right.
What's the fix?
Well, it just seems to be a real hot, important issue.
It is a hot, important issue. There was poop coming up in your basement
Yeah.
There are buildings on Albany Avenue right now. It's condemned because there's fecal matter sewage in the basement. Been there for 5 years.
Right.
Most people have no idea. There's been flooding along Albany Avenue, flooding along down by Fish Fry, North End.
North End, right.
All right, Blue Hills.
Blue Hills.
Love Lane. We go all along around the city. Franklin Avenue, maybe. But a lot of the places on the southern side have been fixed.
And the North End, where these other issues are happening,
still hasn't been fixed.
Right. So that's why when people like Attorney Cynthia Jennings is saying environmental racism and low-income areas where it's taking place at, that it wouldn't be tolerated in other
right. But the people in low-income areas have low political muscle. Right. The political fallout from treating them a certain way isn't the same as the political fallout of treating some other group of political. These are political issues.
Right.
These are political decisions. People can be mad all they want.
Yeah.
The fix, the overarching overall fix is to make some political, to grow some political muscle.
Right. Well, it's not to bash the capital city, but, there's 3 ways people can look at the city of Hartford, whether people like to hear this or accept it or not. There's some people who have an issue with living in certain parts of the city. Some people will tell you they're not going to ever want to live in the North End, certain other areas of the city of Hartford. There's other people will tell you they just can't deal with Hartford. They don't want to live in the city limits, period. Then there's even another group of people who will tell you they want to stay. They don't even want to be around the surrounding towns. They want to be far away from the city as they can to still be classified as a state resident. Whether that means anything or not, but that's just how some people view the city.
That's true, but there's also people that view the city as I want to move there and are moving here.
Yeah.
From other states and other parts of the region.
Right, that's true.
So it's not like everyone wants to abandon Hartford.
Right. Folks
are moving into Hartford. Hartford is being colonized and gentrified. So Hartford is a destination.
Certain parts of the city.
Right. I would contend when certain elements desire to move into some parts of the city, those areas that we are talking about now will suddenly get fixed.
Yeah. Well, you just said that the South End, they had the same problem, and then the problem got fixed in the South End of Hartford.
Right.
And to be honest, the South End doesn't look that much more developed. Maybe I'm not
looking
at the right way.
This project is not a new project. That's why my brain freezes over when we talk about this. It's not a new project.
Right.
This has been going on for a long time, the Clean Water Sewer Separation Project. All right. Where you start first is a political decision.
Right.
Who's going to be last is a political decision. All right. The south end of Hartford didn't always look like it looks now.
Okay, that's true.
People are leaving, and then new people move to where that vacuum happens. So there's a lot of things going on in the city of Hartford. A lot of things.
Right.
And the powers that be know exactly what's going on.
Well, you said something key that the South End used to be viewed as a solid middle class section of the city, but believe me, you go down many parts of Franklin Avenue, Broad Street, it ain't looking like no solid middle class area
because people have moved out.
Right. So when I just said that, I look at the South End, I don't view it as that much more developed and impressive than other parts of the city. I'm not taking anything away from some parts of the South End, but like you just said, people have moved out. Franklin Avenue does not look all that to me. Wethersfield Avenue does not look like, they got heavy prostitution, they got speeding on that street. It's not all that. But despite of all that, the South End, if that's part of what you're talking about, have been able to get certain things done or corrected that the North End hasn't been able to do.
Right. Once upon a time, a lot of the prostitution was going on around Bushnell Park.
Okay. Right.
Then Bushnell Park had some residents move over to Bushnell Park, aka the Bronins, and guess what? Prostitution stopped. Where did it go? Weathersfield Avenue.
Right.
Stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum or by accident.
Right. Well, I tell you, the old Dutch Point housing projects in the South End, that got knocked down, and that looks very nice. And that used to be a heavy drug infested area of the city. So these problems haven't just creeped up over since the Bronin administration. Now that might, like you say, have moved it again from that area of Bushnell Park.
I think if you check the movement of prostitution from Bushnell Park,
it's during the Bronin administration, right? But I'm saying Dutch Point, when Dutch Point existed, before it got kind of reshaped or knocked down, it was a heavy drug infested area. Now, I don't.
There's a lot of areas in Harvard were drug infested.
Right.
If you tear someplace down, the people that are there have to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm. You've always said the criminals in the underclass. Well, you don't like that word underclass, but the criminals have to live someplace.
Everybody lives. Somewhere.
Lives. Yeah, somewhere.
Right. So where are they gonna live?
Yeah.
Let's move to your house.
Well, not only that, but even when people get released from the from prison, they have to come back to some place. They're not going to all stay in halfway houses. I mean, you're right. Everybody got to live someplace. But I guess how you live and what's being tolerated still is another issue. But hey, man, keep up the good work with what y'all did with this, supporting this bill that needs to get passed or needs to be taken to the floor to audit MDC. Anything worthwhile, if it doesn't usually things that's worthwhile doesn't happen that easy. Usually there's a reason why.
You got to keep fighting.
Right.
That's the mistake people make is they think because they won an exchange, they've won the fight.
Right.
Or they lose an exchange, they've lost the fight. A victory is not the end. Now you got to maintain your station or your position. All right, it's like a touchdown. That's not the end of the game. Mm-hmm. You haven't won because you're ahead 7-0.
Right.
We got a whole lot of game left.
Yeah.
They're gonna come for you. Mm-hmm. They want to win. Everybody wants to win. So all you can do is keep fighting.
Well, that's what you're doing in this mayoral race. You're keeping up the fight. This is your fourth time running, and that's the one advantage that you have that the other candidates, don't seem to have, is that you can show the consistency of getting back into the mayoral race and running again. And your commitment to the city has obviously been proven. I mean,
I don't think anyone could question my commitment to the city.
Right. And hopefully,
or my tenacity, stick-to-itiveness, or the consistency of what I'm fighting for.
Right.
It has not changed since 2007. I'm still fighting for the same thing because those issues have not been resolved.
Right.
I don't need a listening session to know what's wrong.
But if fundraising is going to be an issue, I don't know if somebody brought that up or heard something related towards this campaign. It might have been even you. If fundraising is going to be a challenge, let's try to work on that now. Now, if you don't see fundraising or raising up enough funds as a big issue towards your campaign, then that's one thing. But if you think that's going to be something that you would like to correct, to raise more funds to compete.
We need $50,000 to win.
Okay.
$50,000 to win.
Okay.
Right. I don't have to buy name recognition.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully the $50,000 is attainable.
50 people, $1,000 each.
Okay.
100 people, $500 each.
Right.
I know 50 people I could squeeze for $1,000 right now.
Okay.
I just haven't never done that.
You have never done that, yeah.
No. I find it distasteful. However.
Right. Well,
there are enough people who owe me a solid. Get your checkbook out.
Right.
But I'm not that kind of guy.
That's that kind of guy, yeah.
Maybe if I was up at the Senate, but
All right.
That was mean.
All right. Well, let's see how
I
things.
shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. Again, but like I said, that's a pretty good goal though. $50,000 is all that you need.
Right.
I'm sure you'll take more if it's available.
Right, and we got people who actually believe in what we're doing, who volunteer too. So I mean, I don't have to pay campaign manager.
Mm-hmm. And this guy Marcus, who's running your bus, your mobile unit, he's very helpful with this. I still haven't seen this mobile unit.
Oh, you got to see the mobile bus. Yeah, Marcus is a very good friend of mine.
Right, I know Marcus. I mean, I don't know him I'm not his friend like you is, but I know him and everything. So again, Stan, I mean, I appreciate you giving me the time this week. Let me work on finding a guest for next week, and hopefully, you'll have a show this Wednesday.
Yeah, we should have a show this Wednesday. That I am certain.
Okay.
So. All right, our time is up, my friends. We'll see you next time. Y'all have a great rest of your day.
Hey, Hartford, Connecticut, I'm talking to you. We got to get out and vote. Vote for Stan McCauley. It's our time. We got to rise up and take it back. Vote for Stan McCauley.
Vote for Stan. You got to vote for Stan McCauley. Vote for Stan.
Than just what your social covers, and it ain't somewhere written down in bold letters. Don't just take my word for it, do your research, think of your future, look at your bigger picture. Shooting shot, clean up, unity for the righteous, plotting on action, hands-on access, with a light source vision, door-to-door knocking, guerrilla style marketing, brainstorm as a collective, real neighborhood suggestions, only we know what it is where we living, to make real life decisions, move on facts, make it manifest back.
You gotta vote for Stan McCauley. Vote for Stan. Vote for Stan. Vote for Stan. Oh yeah. Look at your city. Stop. Take a look around. Is opportunity flow into your house? Are you working? Wait, can you save some money? And is your neighborhood safe? Or is it a homicide every night? Vote can change it, yeah.
Hi, my name is Marlon E. Styler Sr. Many of you may know me as the two-time welterweight champion of the world. I'm here to tell you that Democrat J. Stan McCauley, as our next mayor, will fight for you until the last bell. Help me throw a knockout punch. Go out and vote for Stan the Man.
My name is J. Stan McCauley, and I approve this message.